IBJ Foundation had the pleasure of partnering with the Coral Reef Alliance at the first ever Water Quality and Reef Protection Summit on Roatan, and joined an amazingly talented group of fully engaged scientists, professionals, and NGOs from Mexico to Honduras, as well as government representatives and funders who are helping ensure the continuous collection and analysis of scientifically robust water quality data on the Mesoamerican Reef.
Over the last 18 years, we've been monitoring the reef, and it was in poor condition when we began monitoring back in 2006. We had some increases in reef health. We got up to fair in 2014 and 2016, and then it began to drop again.
The last 3 years was the first time I ever saw mass mortality on the reef. And to the point where you're diving there and you're watching it right before your eyes, and the only thing you want to do is cry. And so that was in 2020 with SCTLD, and it killed over 22 species of hard corals. And so our reefs are completely changed from what they were when I was a kid. So the overall health of the Mesoamerican reef is currently very poor, and there are many factors that contribute to this, and they go along the lines of untreated sewage discharge, deforestation from the upper watersheds, and so you have all that sediment that's coming down to the reef, and then there have been new diseases that are killing the corals as well, like Sunni coral tissue loss disease, or better known as SCTLD.
And so recent coral surveys, looking at the percent of the coral reef that is living coral, that has dropped. Very small. It's a small percent drop, but it is, affecting some of the more important species. So sometimes you have the big structural species, the big boulder corals, that they provide a lot of the actual wave break against storms, and they provide fantastic habitat for fish and lobsters underneath them. Those are ones that have been hit really hard by this stony coral tissue loss disease. And then this year, in 2023, we just saw the worst coral bleaching event ever. And a few of our sites that have the highest living coral cover were hit really hard.
Things are declining. It's hard to think about climate change. It's hard, very complex issues, but there are easy solutions, and there are bite-sized pieces that everyone can take and be a part of to make a real difference. And the earth, you leave it alone a little bit and it will rebound, right? It knows how to be resilient if we do the right things. And so we're seeing that all over, right? We're seeing these little glimpses of hope. Here in Roatan, where I am right now, we recently did some water quality testing, and we found out that there was a real need for a wastewater treatment facility. So everyone got together, we brought all the right people in, raised the money, we built the facility, and we know 30 million gallons of sewage are staying off of the reef there every year. And now, because we do science and we do testing, we see, yes, the water quality is a lot better.
Many of the restoration projects that are ongoing are growing specifically adapted or higher heat tolerance strains of the corals. So that provides hope, because these are the ones, many of them did survive this last bleaching event. Some of the outplanted corals actually did better than the natural corals. So that's because they were selected for being tough. We got to pick the tough ones. So we need to intervene. We've already intervened in the global climate, and we need to intervene in the coral reefs to help them adjust to what we've done.
We need to do more. We really, really need to start educating our people more. We need to recycle. We need to reuse. And so we have a long ways to go.
There are many initiatives and projects to protect the reef, like marine patrols, dynamic education programs for the new generation at schools, and with field activities like mangrove reforestation, or coral nurseries, as well as community development programs.
Well, in a coral reef community, there's generations and generations of people that have survived and thrived using the coral reef for their food, for their livelihood. So obstacles there are really, how do we work together? How do we bring the right people together to have a conversation to ensure that the reefs can survive for many generations to come, so that those same community members can still have food for their families, can still make their livelihoods. But sometimes it's hard to balance the immediate need with the long-term outcomes that you want. For instance, we look at, okay, if we try to suggest not fishing on the reef at a certain time of year for a certain amount of time, what that means is you're taking away food and you're taking away money from the community. So what we have to do is try to think, how can we replace those things? How can we work together and say, okay, there are other protein sources. We work on a project like aquaculture, where, you know, we're helping provide best practices on something that will provide income and provide food.
For example, the spiny lobster and the queen conch industry has a very high demand in the Caribbean and worldwide. But there are not enough effective regulations to protect these species that are so important to the reef health and the community. IBJ is pleased to have been able to contribute several interventions to support this fantastic team and rebuild the resilience of blue social, ecological, economic systems with urgently needed transformative changes along the Mar. Queen conch baselines in the Bay Island National Marine Park. First ever baselines for spiny lobster in the Bay Island National Marine Park. Donation of 3 salinity temperature, conductivity, and current meters, highlighting the importance of managing reproductively active fish on the continental shelf edge.
The importance of creating communities is to build synergies to protect the reef. But the reef is much more than the sum of its parts. It's people, it's donors, it's users, and it's groups that, like ourselves, that are trying to support. And I think the most important thing to realize is that we're at a very early stage. After 30 years of neglect, now there's a group that's trying to work together to try to put ideas together, work with different sectors, and each one trusting the other to do their job. So it's, in a way, it's like this mangrove trying to find its way down into the ground, you know, to try to build these connections. As you can see, we're a long way away from this, but ideally what we would like is something like this, a strong network. So it requires a big picture, not just with the ecosystem dynamics, which are extremely complex, but also the dynamics of the donors, the NGOs that are supporting, and most importantly, the highest levels of government need to buy in and get more serious about trying to protect and start shifting more to realizing that we need a blue economy, but not just a blue economy buzzword, but something that is circular, that's linked, that reduces waste and tries to build up the strong points of the network.
There is a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of people willing to do it. As stewards of the reef, different generations coming together with lots of hope.